example of how I think the marketing influenced our culture, and then in turn our culture would influence the marketing. And as we
Yeah.
got bigger and we grew, and things got a little more complex, especially in those mid 2000s, I think we really tried to stay true to the core of who we were. And as you mentioned earlier, I think over the last few years, I think that's probably not been as true, but in fact, I know it hasn't. But in those early days, especially in the mid 2000s to even 2010, 11, 12. I mean, I think that we did our best to stay true to that core, and I think that's when I look back over my time there, over my 10 years, those were the times that I was most inspired by, and I think that's the thing, I think, is that I was just as inspired as anyone else, and that's when I think you have something that's magic, when you can.
And you talk about marketing and culture being one. I mean, I don't know if you remember our radio spots that we used to do.
I was going to tell you about the Burrito Lady. I sent it to my brother the other day because I found it in a file. I have Burrito Lady. I mean, come on, solid gold. And I'll post that as well for people. But so good.
Yeah, and we mentioned our name once.
Yes.
In a spot where everyone else in the rule at the time was you have to mention your name at least 7 times.
Yep.
And we barely even mentioned it, but it was also an ode to the Burrito Lady and our line people. And remember, we gave out Burrito Lady t-shirts.
Yes,
so
we
that's
did.
Where it kind of all fused together.
Yes.
To have, and then people would come in and they're like, Burrito Lady, and at hundreds of locations, right?
Right. Exactly.
But that's another thing. And we wanted to undo advertising, and at that time that's what people did. Everything was about radio advertising because there wasn't the internet and there wasn't Facebook or Instagram. And so you either did outdoor or you did radio. And we used to go, how do we turn this upside down and really get people to tap their feet just like they do in the music inside the stores? And so, and I remember like DC 101 in Washington, D.C., the top rated show, they played our ad as a top requested song.
Well, I was sitting at home wishing I had me a burrito. A burrito would be oh so sweet right now. So I said to my friend, I got to see her again. I gotta go get me a burrito. My friend said, man, I understand. It's not about the meal, it's about how you feel. We said, hey, 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 burrito lady, you drive me crazy, burrito lady. Yeah, she knows me well, and I can always tell that she's got what I need. There's only one thing left for me to say. I gotta get back to Chipotle. I said, hey, 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 burrito lady, you drive me crazy, burrito lady. I said, hey. Find your burrito love at Chipotle.com.
Wow.
And you go, that's when I knew, like, this is hitting, is people call up and say, can you play that Chipotle song? And we built a whole campaign, and it was just working with a local musician saying, Kevin, come up with a story, write a song about it. Don't oversell our name.
Right.
And there was a whole bunch of them. They were great.
Can you talk about the music that we used to play in the restaurants? When I was going through training, we were switching over from using the discs to some sort of a music player. But I actually, believe it or not, Dan, I have a binder. Do you remember the old binders we used to put CDs in? I have a binder full of those mixed CDs. And I remember like just working while I was in training, and I was at Louisville, and I remember training at Louisville, and I just remember hearing the music. I'm like, what is, and we were switching. And so Shane, the manager there, Shane's like, here, do you want these CDs? We don't need anymore. I'm like, absolutely. So I've still got them. So can you talk about the music? Cause that was such a, I think such
they're for sale on eBay too.
Are they really? That's
again, 2 decades later. Yeah, I mean, I was a music freak, but not really knowledgeable. I just like what I liked. In fact, I'm lyric deaf, so I don't even remember the names of songs. Or we had complaints that I wouldn't know I wouldn't listen to the lyrics.
We got a few.
Go up there and a lady would say, "Do you realize you're talking about a tampon?" And my daughter's next to me, so we had to change all of that. But the music was handpicked because everything at that time, again, was just background music. It was the worst of music time. That was when music was just background music.
So true.
And we used the music as an atmosphere enhancer, and we took music from the background and put it in the foreground, and we're like, play it loud.
That's right.
And there was always that thing about how loud, too loud, but it was like I purposely picked songs that people didn't hear because there was only 3 radio stations that people listened to, and it was all the same top 40. So I wanted to play everything that wasn't on the radio.
Yeah.
And all the stuff that it always had kind of this beat to it. Every song pretty much had that beat.
Right.
Because I wanted people while they're waiting in line to be kind of nodding their head to it or shaking their ankle to it, or a little kid when you know it's working when you see a kid kind of dancing over there,
right.
A 7-year-old kid dancing to a music they've never heard before. And so we really used that as a tool. We burn these CDs and ship out CDs to stores, and then it got old real quick because we couldn't do them. There wasn't enough capacity then, but it became a whole. Music was part of it, and we purposely picked stuff that was never from a top performer. If it was a song that people knew, it was a cover or a B-side.
Yep.
That was kind of the philosophy. But I don't know if you remember, or if you're around that time, but I remember we opened in Austin, and everyone's like, the reason why our sales are bad in Austin is we don't play Austin music, and Austin's the music capital, and you need to be playing Austin music, and that's why people aren't coming in. And I'm like, if everyone's playing Austin music, then let's play the opposite of that, and let's play our music.
Exactly. I wasn't in Austin at the time. I was in Kansas City, but it
was a battle. Yeah. And it was because, and we stuck to it, and it ended up working. And Austin people were the ones that are going, well, we really like what you're playing.
Right. Well, it's funny because I'm so glad we're talking about this because I don't think a lot of people think about it, but what you play and the ambiance in the restaurant is so important, and music is one of the biggest things, right? In addition to seating and decor and all those things. But I mean, the music, like, that grabbed me, as somebody being new to the brand, in 2002. And it was definitely unique, really different. Nobody else was doing it. And I think it made a huge impact for sure.
Well, and I go back to that marrying of culture and marketing and branding too. I remember in those early days, we had some struggles with consistency and going through, but that's where we kind of realized you can tell how well a restaurant's running within 10 seconds of walking through the door.
100%.
So you open up the door, there's no music and it's dead knocking, and you hear it's clanking pans. That means someone's not paying attention to it. You feel the dead vibe of a crew that's not happy because they've got the wrong person above them.
Right.
And it's like you can tell that really, really fast. And that's where it kind of blurs between that, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. In those early days, I remember, we would look for ways. Like, I have this picture of me and Ben. It was this was in Omaha again, on Dodge, and I have a picture. I have a picture with Ben and a guy dressed up. This was around the election time. So this was an election in 2004. There was a guy dressed up as a stormtrooper and a guy dressed up as somebody like who's the other guy in Star Wars? There, Darth Vader. So Darth Vader and a stormtrooper, we each have pictures with them, and they, and that was a big deal. People loved it. Everyone's getting pictures. They were even our people, right? It was just, again, people coming in, people excited, people, they find a way to connect to certain things. And, I remember Ben having a corn cob on his head and just, stuff like that, right? Just all the unique, crazy stuff we did that was just so much fun that people just absolutely loved.
And I mean, remember how crazy the Halloween was.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Especially it got to that point, but like to have customers come in dressed up.
Yes.
As our food, it's like, who does that? But well, that's when we realized they'll do anything for $5. But
That's right. Exactly. This article that you contributed to a few weeks ago, and I know you've been asked about this a ton, but I just got to ask you. I mean, the one quote that everyone is talking about is, "We didn't have any money, but we had things to say." And obviously we talked a lot about that today, and some of those things, but that quote really resonates with a lot of people. And I
was surprised by that.
Yeah, I just wonder if you could maybe expand on that a little bit.
Well, I'm surprised it caught off because I don't even remember saying it. But
sometimes those are the best things.
Yeah, my brain's like a cockpit recorder. Every 2 hours, it just records over itself. But I mean, I think the deal is you can either complain you don't have any money or whatever. But we wanted to change the world. We wanted to change the world. And so that was really important. We didn't like what we saw. We didn't like change. That was why we created this anti-change. We didn't like the food that was being sold to people. That's why we made really good food. We didn't like the cold and bad atmosphere of what it was like to work at a chain restaurant. So we wanted to make a place that was really cool and fun, great music and fun and speed and fast and running people through the place. Like everything was around there was to try to change what was out there and reinvent, because it was bad in the 90s. There wasn't a lot of good stuff out there. It's like we had kind of repeating now of kind of total system failure a little bit, but there was a lot of bad crap that was out there. And that's when companies were, putting fillers in the food. Like there's all sorts of stuff out there. So that's why we really wanted to change that. And we wanted to drag our customers along with us. Yeah. And have them be part of it. And that's why we started with highlighting farmers. When I wrote the Food with Integrity Manifesto, it was like, this is just a start. This is a journey. It's not easy. We're going to do this one step at a time, but let's talk about what it is. And that's where we came up with the Food with Integrity. And it since went off to getting into preaching. But to me, the cool thing was, and I just saw this 6 months ago, was I saw a package of Oscar Mayer bologna, and it said, "No, never ever any antibiotics."
Wow.
And you go, and I stopped, and I'm like, we did it.
That's right.
Like no one, especially Oscar Mayer bologna, talk about a spectrum. Yep. I'll go through all of that, and years later, these companies are talking about not having any antibiotics in the food. I'm sorry, no one was doing that. No one did it at the time. We did that, and we really changed the world. Made me feel really good about screwing with the system.
I love that, and you mentioned something a second ago. Did you ever foresee, when you talk about dragging people along with this, there are so many people that champion what we did. I mean, we had the ambassadors, for local colleges. We'd give them, I don't know, $200 or $300 and, the Burrito Bucks and a bunch of shirts. Right. I mean, did you ever think we'd create such huge fans? I mean, with what we were doing?
No, it was amazing. And, I remember, looking at like, wow, if looking at the sales at the original Evans store, and I'm like, wow, if we can only get every store to get up there at $400,000 a year, we're going to be really golden, right? And then we open up in New York, and that's when we really kind of perfected the speed thing. But but and then we're doing $4 million, and you go, holy cow, and running people through there, and jaded New Yorkers
out of 1,200 square feet or something crazy like that. Yeah.
And Phil Petrilli and Mike Bagliari, I mean, those are the guys, and Randy, like they made it happen in New York, and they're the ones who figured out that took us to the next level of stuff. And it's there. And again, kind of going back to what you're trying to do, and this is a side thing, but I remember sitting in our restaurants across the street with a time-lapse video, which was really not really a video. It was just I took a video and then we just spat it out. So it wasn't really time-lapse. But we would sit across from 18th in California and say, why does the line, that was our busiest restaurant. And it was, why are there 50 people in line? And then